Drive not possible.
Okay.
1 second, sometimes we really don't know what happens.
It's okay, ma'am. It's okay. Take your time.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So, I'm going to talk about the Indian knowledge system and holistic health. What I'm going to do is, cover 7 aspects in this talk. First, I'm going to talk about Indian knowledge system and why it is important. Then I will talk a little about what is the difference between Western and Indian system. And then what is it that we mean by holistic medicine system. I'm going to talk about a little about indigenous societies, because primarily these kinds of developments take place in a indigenous society. Then I'm going to focus on medicine. And you will see that when we talk of holistic health, food also becomes a big issue. And I'm going to look at our approach towards food. And now I'm going to talk in the end about patents, something which has really created a lot of confusion. And so, I'm going to primarily talk about these 7 aspects. I hope in this one and a half hour which I've been given, up things more clearly. All of us know that in Indian civilization, we have given a lot of importance to knowledge. When we talk of knowledge of our past, and there are so many schools of thought that these all form the domain of knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells Arjun that, knowledge is the knowledge, this is something which will really liberate a person. And our Indian knowledge tradition, it is very ancient, and second, it is uninterrupted. If I have to go to, country, Egypt, we have to really go to their museums. But something very unique about India is we are living this very knowledge and tradition system. It is very much a part which are read in a Hindu marriage, they come from the Vedas. Look at our festivals which we celebrate. We just had Vijayadashmi. Everyone worshipped, the vehicles. And when I would go to my office, I would find my computers with lot of tikas, flowers, etc. And we all accept it. Something very nice about India is, one, we are not ashamed of our religion, unlike many Western countries. Second, we've had an uninterrupted flow of knowledge. So this is something, it is like the flow of river Ganges, right from Vedas, Upanishad, to, if you come to the modern, we started with the ancient traditions. Obviously, we were Hindus. Then when Islam comes in, it also makes a lot of contribution. And if you come to the modern period, we had a lot of thinkers who went back to it. If we look at our system in ancient world, I'm going to focus more on that because that's an area where I have some knowledge. We, in the Mundaka Upanishad, we have 2 kinds of knowledge that are Parvidya. The Parvidya is where we have, the ultimate knowledge about Paramatma or Brahma. It is in the metaphysical domain. And the second one, knowledge is Aparvidya, is secondary. It is how one grasps the Akshara Brahman, that is the worldly knowledge. Now, there is a lot of difference between the two. because one knowledge is only through, it is through observation by looking at it. You look at it with your eyes and you gain this knowledge. So one, drishti becomes very important. How are you looking at that knowledge? How are you experiencing? How we are connecting our antarmukhi, our inward looking self to the outer self. And it becomes, the mind has to be prepared so that the mind acquires the first kind of knowledge. According to our traditions, mind is just not a sensory apparatus, but it is through this that we experience knowledge firsthand. And the second is, you acquire knowledge through a process of preparation. You have to prepare yourself to acquire that knowledge. You have to go through. So then, now, there is a big distinction between Gyan and Vigyan. They also make a difference between the two. And that is, one is knowledge of facts is Gyan, and Vigyan is about the perceptible world. So we find that it is, over time, these different domains of knowledge have been institutionalized into different disciplines, which we call vidyas or crafts or kala. And we have, our knowledge is so diverse. It includes diverse areas like philosophy, architecture, grammar, mathematics, astronomy, sociology, dharmashastra, economy and polity, arthashastra, ethics, niti shastra, geography, logic, military science, weaponry, agriculture, mining, trade, commerce, metallurgy, shipbuilding, poetics, biology, and even veterinary science. So, in short, whatever form of knowledge today we are talking, today, if we look at our knowledge, we are so much inspired by the Western world. We think, all our knowledge has come from the West. But we have all this in our ancient traditions. And you have a large number of, a continuous and cumulative series of texts. And over a period of time, since our tradition, there were two big lacunas in this system. One, it was all in Sanskrit, the ancient knowledge. And Sanskrit was not available to everyone. It was only the very elite Brahmins who knew it. So they were the ones who became the custodians of this knowledge. And it was oral. It was passed from one generation to another. And it was second is Gyan and Vidya. I've already explained Gyan and Vidya. Darshan becomes a system. What is the point of view? How are we looking at a particular fact? And it is once you have this drishti, you have a point of view, this leads to Gyan or knowledge. And once we gather knowledge, we find that then it becomes a discipline. So, there is a lot of interconnectedness. First, you have to approach knowledge as a system, as a point of view. And then you acquire knowledge and it becomes a discipline later on. So therefore, when you talk of Gyan, Vigyan and Jivan Darshan, the whole point of view, we find that there is a lot of observation, experimentation, and a rigorous analysis. See, today when we talk of how do we define a scientific phenomena? I'm sure I was looking at the list of participants, which, the course director was kind enough to send me. Many of you come from social sciences. We talk, earlier we were not talking of social sciences, but there was a big movement and we said, no, it is sciences. How do we define sciences? Where you look at a certain thing, there is observation, there is experimentation, and there is a rigorous analysis. And we said, though we are studying about society, but our knowledge is also a science, because when we analyze a fact, we first start with observation. Our experiment is the human laboratory. We are looking at human beings. We are looking at institutions. We are looking at phenomena. And it is through a rigorous analysis that we come to our conclusion. So there is a big discussion saying we are also a science. So all this, this is what we understand by science. But Indian knowledge system already has that. And we have, whether we are talking in terms of education, arts, administration, law and justice, commerce, manufacturing, health, these three were the basic point. You observed certain things, there were a lot of experimentation which was taken up, and there was a rigorous analysis which was done finally to come to results. And so knowledge of India in that sense includes a knowledge of all these facts of our ancient world, its successes, challenges. And it is also, something which is very important, because when we are trying to build a futuristic India, we feel that this futuristic India, all of us are teachers, unless there is so much of emphasis given in our new education policies on making the teachers capable, building the capacities of teachers. Unless we build the capacities of teachers, our future will not be bright. Because we get all these WhatsApp on Teachers' Day, that an engineer, doctor, everyone comes through teachers. Teachers make so much contribution. So unless the teachers are capable, they have this capacity building, they will not be able to train the future generation. So whatever knowledge we are talking today, if we have this knowledge about our ancient tradition, we have this clarity, it will definitely help us. Again, one more point which is very important about our ancient knowledge is that there is not a single truth. See, unlike in the West, where they emphasize that, to be rigorous, there has to be only one truth. So what happened when they were saying that, they did not believe that the earth moves around the sun? They felt that, no, these are celestial bodies. How can the sun move around? How can the earth move around them? And Galileo and all were not, they didn't accept the verdict of Galileo and Copernicus, because they said that, it did not come in, what they were speaking was against what the church was trying to say. But accepts that there is no one single truth. And it is something, there is always, truth is there, and truth is ultimately one. But to approach that truth is, it cannot be just one single path. There is a lot of multiplicity in approaching that truth. So, there could be several paths, there could be multiple paths to this truth, there could be different worldviews, ontologies, epistemologies, and therefore, our approach can be either you confirm, and it could be at the individual level, at the societal level, at the communal. And it, the Indian mind has concluded that our knowledge, the ultimate knowledge, is oneness of all, which is called as abheda. There is no difference ultimately. But and ultimately, once you reach that knowledge, there is no difference between the self and the other. They both become one. But how you approach it, the ways can differ. So therefore, Indian knowledge system is also known as traditional knowledge system. Very scientific, it is more rigorous. But traditional is something which is very old. It is something which is outdated, and science, modern becomes very relevant. There is always a tussle between. United Nations also says, how it defines the traditional knowledge system, saying that it is a record of human achievements in comprehending the complexities of life and survival in the often unfriendly environment. UNO recognizes this, saying that today, our world is facing such a crisis. Look at pollution, look at global warming, look at the, look at the wars which are going. We are talking about, is a third world war going to be? Look at terrorism. There are so many issues. But survival. but our traditional knowledge is really a record, and it will help us deal with many of these issues. And therefore, traditional knowledge can be technical, it can be social, it can be organizational, it can also be cultural, and it will definitely help the modern world. So Indian knowledge system helps us to first recognize that there is not just one way of looking at the world and gaining knowledge about it. So, there are multiple ways in which you can reach this knowledge. And just saying that, the Western scientific method is the right way of acquiring knowledge, this is something which the Indian tradition would really certainly not accept. And it talks about epistemological pluralism. There are different facts. There are different ways in which, ultimately, yes, knowledge is one and there is truth, but the ways to reach it are different. And there is a lot of, even if you look at our religion, the Hindu religion, ultimately, aham brahmam, God is one, but there are different ways of reaching it. Just as, the ocean is one, there are different ways in which you can reach it. The West, how did the West acquire knowledge? They talk a lot in terms of senses. It is verified by logic, scientific, and mathematical thinking. Whereas the Indian knowledge system depends a lot on our views of knowledge. It is more subjective. It is not as talking in the sense, talking of logical, scientific, the way the West understands it. So therefore, if you look at traditional knowledge, it is more than 2 million years ago. When the Homo habilis, when the human beings started making, they made their first tools, when they gave shape to their first tool, then they were interacting with nature. And that is how old our traditional knowledge is. About 17th century, from the time of Newton, we started talking of a scientific inquiry. And we find that, right from the beginning of dawn, different people have contributed to different branches of science and technology. They have interacted across cultures, which separated from large distances. You'll be surprised to know that when Islam comes into India, when you had the medieval rulers who came, many of the Sanskrit texts were translated into Persian. They wanted to understand and read it. Even when the Britishers came, though they had a different motive, they also learned, the Asiatic Society was set up for this purpose, that they wanted to read Sanskrit and understand the language of the people, what is the philosophical thought of the people. And we find that the Western science has a lot of atomic worldview. It talks about logical positivism. It is very Aristotelian in its logic. But the Indian knowledge system talks about Shastra, the Pancha Mahabhut. It talks about Siddhant, Sankhya, and Nyaya Visheshika. That is how it goes. It is a function of a state of mind. How do we see the world? And there is a lot of difference. See, if, how do our perception vary? I'm sure you must have heard, once in a train, a mother was going with her 3 children. And the children were, in a British train, Britishers are supposed to be very uppity and tight, and they don't like indiscipline, etc. But these children were small children, they are running, they are making a lot of noise, they are creating havoc, they are pulling each one's head, and the mother is just sitting quietly, she's not saying anything. So ultimately, many of the passengers get very restless. But, finally, before getting down, one Britisher tells this mother, he says that, I felt bad that you did not stop your children. You could have controlled them, and they created so much of a nuisance. Then this mother says, I've just come, I have buried my husband, and I'm coming from there with these 3 children. I'm so worried what will happen to our future. Suddenly, the perception in that whole train changes. See, the truth is there, ultimate truth is there, but how we approached it. Before they knew the reality, all these people were blaming the women, they were blaming the children. But once they knew the truth, they became very sympathetic to her. They understood her dilemma and her plight, and they became very comforting to these children. So, this gives a very good example of how we approach knowledge. There could be different views for it. And even our Ayurvedic knowledge, it is originally said to be derived from Brahma, which means Brahma is a state of mind, which is very close to nature. And here in the Indian knowledge system, there is no difference between the subject and object, between the observer and observed. You're not standing separate and observing something. That these two are not different units. You are not the subject and the object is different. At one point, both of them come together. That's the difference. They give a lot of importance to understanding the mind, whether we talk in terms of observation, logic, and it talks in terms of, there are different, in the Indian tradition, we have to eliminate the repose, that is the sixth mental state. And whatever, when we are looking at any issue, if we have any of these state of mind, it will color and prejudice our mind. And what are these six? It talks in terms of anger. It talks about greed, lust, egoism, and looking at color, looking at prejudice. So, unless we remove these, we will not be able to bring out this uniformity between the subjective and the objective. And it says that, the whole Indian tradition, there is a controlled experiment and something how, which science has not been able to consider necessary for the derivation of this knowledge. Now, one thing, when I'm talking about the Indian knowledge system, it is not that I'm saying this is much better and that is worse. See, I'm making a comparison between the Western sciences and the Indian knowledge system. That doesn't mean that Indian knowledge system is much higher, or they are different. We are not talking in terms of superior or inferior. See, each knowledge system is different. It cannot be that this is much superior and this is inferior, because all the medical system, whether it is Ayurveda, allopathy, homeopathy, or Unani medicine, they share a common aspect that they are trying to cure the health and mind of the people. And there is a lot of correlationship between terms, concept, and categories in these systems. We find, because of the domination of Western culture for the past 2 centuries, and especially if you look at Indian history, once the Britishers came, they kind of decried all our knowledge system. And it was treated as being much more inferior. We were ashamed of our Ayurveda. We were ashamed of this thing, our knowledge system. And we only gave a lot of importance to Western system. So the approach should be not that this is superior and this is inferior, but yes, these are two different systems. The goal is same, but their approach is something which is very different, because how they approach problem solving is very different. See, in the modern scientific method, the whole, you isolate a problem from its environment. You try to eliminate the linkages with nature, and you are trying to, whatever experiments you do, you are doing it in a very controlled parameter. But whereas in a traditional approach, you look at the problem in its entirety. You also look at the interlinkages, the complexity, and only then you think you can come to a balanced solution. So therefore, when we talk of the Indian knowledge system, one, there is a lot of multifacetedness. And like Charak, who is a very important ancient sage, he says that the Shastras depend upon yukti, that is the intellect. And we understand that the phenomena are connected. They come across because of multiplicity of causes, and they in turn make a phenomena. So therefore, once having understood, we can perceive a problem from a multiplicity point of view, we can really bring them together at one place. And this is something, which affects the whole knowledge about health and holistic measurement. So I'll just give you an example. See, measurement and quantification are very important parts of indigenous system of medicine, but they are very different from the modern system. See, when we talk of measurement in traditional science, we are using units to normalize an individual. See, today when we talk of height, we understand a certain parameter that 5 feet means this much. 60 kilo weight means this much. There is a uniformity across. But when we talk of the Indian knowledge system, what it does is, it measures the unit as anguli, and that is the dimension of the finger of an individual. So rather than having an arbitrary standard that this is 5 feet, this is the height, it will measure the anguli of an individual and calculate his or her height based on this measurement. So, for them, it would vary across different people. It would not have a very standard kind of a height that, this is normal height. That if you are 5, see, nowadays what we have in many of the entrance exam where you have physical, many people are rejected saying you are not, you should be, let's say 6 feet. This should be your height. And if they don't qualify in that, they are rejected. But that would not be in the traditional system. They would look at the finger of a person and calculate the height of that person based on this kind of a measurement. And this is something, which is very important. So therefore, let me sum up before I move further. What are the basics of Indian knowledge system? One, it is very ancient in origin. It can be traced back to the Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, and various philosophical treatises. Second, it's an oral tradition. It is passed orally from generation to generation. Much later, it was written down. Third, it is in Sanskrit language, which was the language in which many of the texts are written. And fourth, there is a lot of spirituality and philosophy. When they are talking of whether it is holistic medicine or any aspect, everything is connected to the philosophy and spirituality of it. There is a lot of importance given to techniques like yoga and meditation. These two become very important, and they are an integral part of the Indian knowledge system. And it has made a lot of contribution to science, even today, to the modern world, whether we talk in terms of the concept of zero, decimal system, or our observation in astronomy, or even, medicines or Ayurveda. So, these are the 6 important features of the Indian knowledge system. Am I audible? I'm sitting behind a laptop, so I won't know when I'm going off the air. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you. So, yeah. So now let me come to the other part. If we look at our
Yes,
ancient India, we've always had this, we had so many sages and seers. They were all, scholars and scientists. Right from, we made one of the best steels in the world. They were, if people would come to the courts, they would learn we had one of the best swords in medieval world, which nobody could make at that time. Our technologies were also well established. We have also developed many theories and techniques, on which many of the principles of modern science and technology are based. See, the problem really started when the British came to India. They could never accept that even in 3rd millennium BC, when the British were still at a barbarian stage, we were so well civilized and developed. And, they had come with a big mission that they have come to, white man's burden. They have come to civilize the world. That is how they justified the establishment of colonies. and they could never accept this. So once, the Britishers, many Indologists, they did not study our traditional knowledge system. And when whatever they read, they felt that it was competing with their own technologies. And Britain was now moving into industrial revolution. And what they found was that, whatever they found valuable in Indian knowledge system, it was quickly appropriated. And many of these people were forced out of business because they had to justify their civilizing mission. And we find that, Franz Fanon, he makes a very important point. He says, for a colonizer to establish their rule, what they have to do. And even Edward Said is talking about the same phenomena in his book, Orientalism. See, the first thing the colonizers have to do, they have to make a difference between the colonized and the colonial power. They have to show that the colonial power is much more strong, powerful, civilized than the colonized. So you start differentiating people. Some areas they are not allowed to enter. You have only whites club, etc. And you start this by playing with their mind, making them believe that your knowledge system is not strong enough. And they all, forget your knowledge system, and you only then they are able to colonize. And we have heard so much about Macaulayism, after Lord Macaulay. It became a colonial strategy from 1830s. What did Lord Macaulay say? He said, wherever I traveled in India, I found such good schools, such good, madrasas and pathshalas, that the first thing which we have to do is to educate Indians so that internally they start thinking like Britishers. Their dress and all may be like the natives, he says, but they have to become more modern like and think like the Britishers. And that is how slowly the systematic, decline of our knowledge system started. Okay, now what is it that I'm going to talk about? Holistic medicine. What do we mean by holistic? Holistic means you are dealing with the whole. You're not trying to deal only with parts. When we talk of any health, it includes the mind, body, and spirit. The emotional, mental, and spiritual aspect. You cannot treat one aspect unless you deal with the three. See, today, modern scientific method, they are not bothered. They are only body is important. Unless you talk of mental health, etc., then they are talking about the mind. But they are not concerned with spirit. So holistic means where you try to bring a balance between the mind, body, and spirit. And only then you try to treat the physical ailment or the condition. And it tries to establish that there is a connection between the three. Unless a balance is maintained between the mind, body, and spirit, you cannot have health and wellness. And we have to take responsibility and bring a balance. So therefore, the principles of holistic healing are three basic properties. They are treating the whole person, mind, body, and soul. They are also looking at natural elements, the areas where we are surrounded. And ultimately, by treating this, it is also leading to personal empowerment. That is the goal. And this is something which is not just Indian knowledge system. In 4th century, Socrates advised that if you are just treating one area of the body, it will not have the same effect till you treat the whole body. They were also talking in a similar manner that, if you have pain only in the leg, just treating that part will not cure you. You have to look at the whole body. Even Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, he encouraged a lot of self-healing and emphasized the healing power of nature, in the Hippocratic school of medicine. And in 6th century BC, even Ayurveda, when it is focusing on herbal medicine, it is talking about healing of energies and using the medicinal properties of plants, etc. Now, what are the principles of holistic treatment. There are various guiding principles. One, there is a very strong belief that we have some inborn healing abilities. Cure will not come unless we are positive within ourselves that we can cure this. And there is a belief that the patient and the doctor work together to bring in health and wellness. It's not that the patient is someone different and the doctor is just going there to treat that person. They both are one. They are interested in the health and well-being of the person. And it talks about this whole philosophy of treating a patient as a person. You are not just looking at a disease, whatever disease may be there, but you're looking at that whole person. And of course, it talks in terms of the fixing the cause of the ailment, going back to the root, not just relieving the symptoms. And like I already mentioned, it focuses on the mind-body connection. You cannot treat the whole person unless you focus on the mind-body connection. See, all over the world, we have different types of holistic treatment. From the West, China, we have got acupuncture and acupressure, where they, try to bring about change in the nervous system. And if you look at moxa, the traditional Chinese medicine, they burn a lot of herbs like cannabis over the body, where they put acupuncture needles, etc. And so, though they are treating one area, but they are looking into the whole body. Aromatherapy, where, they believe that by burning certain incense, you can calm the body and soothe the elements. Ayurveda medicine, where we are using a lot of herbs, including cannabis, they are recommending dietary changes and saying that only with these it will change. You also have chiropactic care and osteopathy, where if you have to improve, there is a gentle manipulation of the spine and the neck, so that the body function starts improving. And they are though they target the spine and the neck, but they talk in terms of the whole body and the nerves and the muscle which support the body structure. The naturopathy is also talking in terms of herbs, dietary supplements. We have a lot of massage therapies where they try to massage the tissues and tight muscles so that they become loosened. And then you have a lot of these nutritional consultant where individuals learn a lot about food. You also have a lot of, when we talk of holistic treatment, mental health counseling, because in these kinds of treatment, unless you address the mind, the disease will not go. Yoga, a form of exercise which supports the overall wellness. And there is also energy healing, where, you break these, there are a lot of energy points in our body. And by breaking these energy points, the body heals itself. So, there is a lot we can learn from the indigenous knowledge system, both at the personal and societal level. Today, when we are all living in the modern world, in a cyber world, we think we have nothing to learn from people who are these old generation back, people who were hunter-gatherers. But like David Harrison says, that we have forgotten and we never knew that maybe our present day world will be saved with that medicines. We live in this hubris, the arrogance and pride in our modern development, modern world, saying that with a lot of confidence that this is the ultimate, and we have ignored our past. If you look at indigenous societies, they were primarily based on egalitarian lines, where there was a lot of, status based on skills. People played a role in society depending on the age. And personal wealth was something which was not highlighted. But it is more a social living. See, again, a major difference between Western and Indian knowledge system is indigenous societies where you have these knowledge, they believe more in communal living, societal living. Whereas Western, it is more individualism. You separate individualism. Privacy is something which is very important. Whereas in the traditional system, the person thinks they are part of the community or a group. So, how did indigenous knowledge societies acquire this knowledge? It was first-hand experience which they considered. That, like I already mentioned, you must have sense, perception, as well as language to experience it. And you need to really walk on the land in order to know it. Unless you travel that whole area, you will really not understand it. So we have to, you have to observe each and every aspect. You have to look at a kind of, you have to really observe things, how they are going. And only then we will be able to deal with. Now, our earliest source of knowledge of Indian medicine comes about from our Vedas, dated about 1500 to 800. And Ayurveda is considered to be the Upuveda, or a supplementary subject of the Atharveda. And there is, if you read the Vedas, there are so many references to various medicines. When the Vedas talk of gods like Rudra, Agni, Varun, Indra, Maruti, they are also talking about the celestial physicians of that time. And we find that, the Atharveda mentions so many physicians and the elaborate, systems of how they were treating diseases. One of the very important texts is the Charak Samhita. This was written in 8th century BC. In fact, it is an encyclopedia of medical compendium by Agnivesha, and it was revised by Charaka between 1000 BC to 200 CE, and it was named as Charak Samhita. This is the first book that practiced Ayurveda in Indian school. What is interesting is this book describes 600 plants and their products which can be used in medicine. Another very important book is the Sashruta Samhita, which was, the famous physician Sashruta in 6th century BC. He was from Banaras. He taught in the university in Banaras. Still today, many of the old palm leaf manuscript of some part of Sashruta Samhita are found in Nepal in the Kaiser Library. And we find that, he describes the elaborate process of surgery. He talks about 650 drugs, different surgeries related to anatomy, toxicology, and embryology. In fact, what is very interesting, if you read this book, he describes various instruments, different types of operation, and also, the accompanying evidence. He was so much aware of human anatomy and how one can, structured. There is so much of an information on the cardiovascular system, how we can nourish the system, the human body. It also talks about like Hridaya, Siras, Dhammanis. In the Vedas, you have these. Siras, Dhammanis arise from Nabi, the umbilicals spread throughout the body. And then Dhammanis, the arteries as we understand them, how they are spread over the bodies. And it talks about the division between Dhammani, Siras, and Sanus based on, how thick those nerves are. And the canals, the thicker canals are called Dhammis, and the finer ones are called Siras. And the much more finer ones are called Sanus. So they are aware of the modern artery system. And they talk in terms of, the Atharveda mentions that there are 5 kinds of diseases which a person can have. The first is the disease which can be caused by wind, water, fire. And these are later, 3 doshas are mentioned like Vat, Pitta, and Kapha. When there is the balance between these 3, then you can have these diseases. Then it also talks about diseases which are caused by possession, demons, evil spirit. Many villages, if you go, they very strongly believe in this. Then there can be diseases due to worms. Then diseases due to sorcery, that is the use of magical powers derived through evil spirit. And it can also be a hereditary disease, that is Kshetraja, which comes from, family to family. It also talks about the detailed explanation of Krimi, that is the organism, classifying them into Drishya, macro, Adrishya, that is micro, existing both in water, earth, and sky, and houses. So therefore, it shows us that the people in the Atharveda were also aware of the ultraviolet rays which are present in sunlight. And they also were aware of the pathogenic bacteria which are found. So what we found is, since there is a mixture of philosophical notion, they exist along with the medical notion. And there was no conflict between the two. In fact, the Atharveda contains sections that discuss longevity, treatment of ailment, cures of diseases, eradication of germs, antidote to poison, food habits, and healthy lifestyle. If you look at the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we find that it emphasizes, along with good thoughts, good work, asana, yoga position, pranayam. Today Ramdev has made Patanjali Yoga so famous. It talks a lot about the balance between the healthy body and mind, as well as samadhi, the meditative contemplation. So the roots of Ayurveda can be traced to this Atharveda at this time. Basic, to have holistic health, we must have a balance of three in our body. And because our body consists of 5 elements, and there should be a balance between Vata, that is air, Vayu, and space, and or Akashi. There should be a balance between Pitta, the fire, or Agni, which we have, and Kapha, that is the earth, Prithvi, and water, the Jala. And if there is a imbalance in these, the body, soul, and spirit cannot attain holistic medicine. And like I've already mentioned, some of the principles of this holistic medicines are, if we maintain this balance, we can heal ourselves. You don't need an outsider to come and deal with it. The patient is a person, it's not a disease. And you don't make a difference between the patient and the doctor. But treatment involves fixing the cause and not just elevating the symptoms. This was something I mentioned, and I want to really emphasize this. These are the principles on which holistic medicine depends. And they talk in terms of the body has 7 fundamental principles. First is the ras, that is the tissue and fluids, the rakta, the blood, mamansa, that is the muscles, meda, the fat, ashri, the bones, maja, that is the marrow, and chukra, the reproductive tissue. And our body is comprising of all these. So they also talk in terms of a lot of good health. Healing will come with good health. Today also, if you go to many villages, in many, whether we worship many of the goddesses when there is an illness, Sitla Mata, Ma Durga, Mariamma, Marisamma, they are all worshipped when there was smallpox or any of these diseases. And Shitla Mata is depicted by carrying brooms and pot, talking in terms of cleanliness, hygiene. And, there is a lot of emphasis given on storing water in bronze or copper pots, because then antiseptic properties they get. We talk a lot of herbal remedies such as turmeric, neem, etc., because these always played an important part. I strongly believe, many of us who are mothers, we don't have to go to a doctor for everything. With our children, I think we become a lot of doctors by ourselves. And all of us, this is a traditional knowledge. We may not have learned it very scientifically, but if your stomach is upset, we'll give little ajwain to the child and say, eat this. Or how we treat in our own way, haldi, if there is a cut in the body, you boil milk and put little haldi and give. So, all of us are familiar with this. And this is something which we have practiced for generation. So it talks about this balance between mind and body, because mind is the one with, it has a lot of creative potential. It is the mind which comes into existence first, and everything else is created subsequently. The gross physical body is the gross material replica of the image of the mind. According to our classic doctrines, it talks about mind over matter. body is the matter, but it is mind which is more important. And they say the mind and the body exist in an immaterial continuum, and they continuously affect each other. So, our emotional well-being, our intellectual well-being, physical, social, environmental, financial, spiritual, so many things are needed for us to be healthy. It also, today, when we talk of disease, our understanding of disease is very different from what we understand by in our traditional knowledge system. It says that every disease has multiple etiological factors. A physical disease can have more than one psychological factors. It's not just a physical disease. It is also because of our body and our spirit. And they give a lot of importance to, when we talk in terms of, if we are undergoing fear, anger, grief, greed, pride, jealousy, you cannot really cure your disease. We have to be away from this. The first is, how do we tackle our fear? Then you get angry. Why did it happen only to me? So, it talks about emotions. We have to also deal with these. And then, all of us are susceptible to illness, because these are common emotional factors. All of us experience this. But what is important is to move away from this, move a little one step ahead of this, So it is very important. What are the values with which we live? What is our attitude? How is our behavior? If we have courage, righteous living, ability to control our behavior. Many of us get angry so easily. It always reminds me of Buddha's quote, anger is like holding a burning coal in your hand, waiting to throw it at someone. So, whom will it harm? Anger harms you first. So first, if you are able to control that, then definitely, our physical, mental state will be much better, resulting in our physical state. They also give a lot of importance to mental health, and saying that through sastras, yoga system, Hindu religious tradition, that, unless your mind is balanced, you cannot treat disease. They give, in our world is so material today. We have to have a little spiritual aspect. Because, unless we have this God realization, we strive for purity, our body cannot be disease free. We will not be able to elevate illness and mitigate troubles. And you may, if Shiva, Yoga, Shash, they are all explaining, they express their disapproval with, we have become so materialistic. I'm sure many of you must be having these thoughts, we have so many diseases today which are life-threatening and all that. But what they say is, we should not reach that stage if we maintain that balance. We recently saw COVID. All of us went through a very difficult phase. It was so easy to get depressed. How do we maintain that balance? Thing which is, though difficult, not that easy, but they talk in terms of, unless we maintain the balance between our spirit, our mind, and our body will not be safe, will not be safe. So they give a lot of importance to spiritual aspect, saying we need to transcend our material existence. Because they say at the worldly level, all our affection and illness, they can be, we address them only through our material means. But to reach a state of serenity, it will only come with spiritual practice. If we are able to sit down calmly, meditate for a short time, then definitely it leads to a lot of well-being. They give a lot of importance to mind. Unless you have this spiritual practice, meditation, you will not have that peace of mind. And definitely, this was the knowledge system which we had. It had so much of an impact around the world. In ancient Greece, we find evidence of, travelers like Pythagoras and Democritus. They came to India in search of knowledge. And whatever they wrote, it is by Indian thought. was a student of Democritus, he proposed that our understanding human conditions based on element air, fire, and water. This is from the Indian knowledge system. And the model bears a lot of similarity with the Ayurveda. A lot of, Buddhist missionaries who were there. When Seleucid Empire came, them, the Buddhism also assimilated a lot of knowledge. And Rome and in India, if you read the of Athenian Sea, reveals that the Indian medicines were such an important part of the Roman trade at that time. Dioscorides compiled a 5-volume of Material Medica, which featured a lot. Definitely, I'm running out of time. Let me go through it. So they talk a lot about, folklore medicine, medicinal plants, etc. So something very important in our knowledge system is, the knowledge about our environment, the plants in our surrounding, and to know them. Now, they give a lot of importance to food also, what we eat. To us, if you look at the Western world, there is what is the approach to diet? It is based around food consumption, and we separate food consumption from food production. Today we say that consumers prefer to buy food which is frozen, clean, wrapped in plastic. And go to a Western market, you don't know from whether that meat is coming, which place it is coming. It is also packed neatly, hygienically, that you don't know. They have totally separated the food production from food consumption. That is what the West has done. But indigenous societies eat what is available to them. Today also, I'm interested in the history of food, look at the food of India, different regions. Something very important. In the north, we don't use so much tamarind because tamarind was not that much available. In south, so much tamarind is used. Kerala uses so much of coconut because that is easily available. So our food was very much dependent on what is available. How we prepare the food is something which is very important. Now, food to the Aryans was not just for the bodily sustenance, but it was a part of the whole cosmic moral cycle. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a very interesting slok which says, from earth sprang herbs, from herbs food, from food seed, from seed man. Man thus consists of the essence of food. From food are all creatures produced, by food do they grow. They self consist of food, breath of mind, and understanding the bliss. Bhagavad Gita also says, from food do all creatures come into being. Hence, in the great Aryan cosmic circle, the eater who is eating, the food, what we eat, and the universe must be in harmony. See, again, like I was talking about holistic medicine, body, spirit, and mind should be one. Then you can have good health. Food also, you cannot differentiate between who is eating, what is being eaten, and from where it has come. These three have to be united. So it was, we had a lot of, concepts like pollution and purity. Can anybody tell me in a discussion, what is the word for jhutha in English? There is no word for jhutha in English because that concept is not there. But here, how you are eating. A housewife who's cooking cannot taste her food. That is unthinkable. If we are, gargling, we are, after eating, when we are washing our mouth, the water which we use for gargle, we cannot take it in because it has a lot of saliva and it is seen as polluting. So water which is used to rinse the mouth must never be swallowed. It should always be thrown out. And we have, many societies where we used to eat with leaf. First, you sprinkle water on that leaf. Even we divide food into three, according to the Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. Sattvic food is something which is very easy to digest. It has a lot of nutritional value, minimum heat. It provides a lot of, energy. And it is something which is prepared immediately. It has fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, grain, nuts, milk products, spices like ginger, turmeric, etc. Fast, what do we eat? We eat a sattvic diet. Rajasic food is that which is rich in flavor, but it is little heavy to digest. It is suitable for people who do a lot of physical work. It uses a lot of butter, spicy, strong flavors. And it takes, after eating this food, you need to sleep for long hours to digest. And tamasic food, it is considered as the worst food. Today, it is something which is dry, unnatural, overcooked, stale, decaying, is called as tamasic diet. Refined food like cereal, oils, hydrogenate better. All our burgers, pizzas, pastry, chocolates would fall in tamasic food. But today, we become so fond of this. It makes a person sick and painful. We may not realize it now, but in the long run. So a tamasic food always creates unhealthy life. See, something, Japanese took a lot of pride in their sushis, because to them, the freshness of meat is very important. The Chinese relied a lot on their flavors, when they make their soups. Indians relied a lot on their spices. This was the major commodity. And the spices are not just used for food. Look at our ginger, our turmeric. It is also used as medicine, and it is also a very important part of us. Now, I want to conclude with the last aspect. One of the biggest problem we are facing today in our Indian knowledge system is this whole concept of patents. What, according to patent law, traditional knowledge is defined as something which is written or unwritten, but which has passed through generation. And see, traditional knowledge, we have not really documented and sent for patents. And this is a very novel idea, according to us. But what happened? See, a global firm, W.R. Grace in the United States Department of Agriculture, it filed a patent for neem in the European office in 1994. See, and it was granted a patent in neem, that it had a patent in neem. Then India lodged a protest. See, we have been using neem for generations. It is so much part as an estrogen antiseptic. And then, it was put on hold. We submitted a lot of texts, Ayurvedic texts, etc. Turmeric. The University of Mississippi Medical Center was given a patent on turmeric in 1995, saying that, turmeric or haldi has wound healing qualities. See, this is something which we know for generation. It is so much part of our knowledge system. So, we are not very savvy in filling patents. But now, what happened? We have started the intellectual property right law. It was passed for the first time, where it encouraged science and technology, saying we have to keep pace with the modern development, and we have to really strengthen our traditional knowledge. So how do we value our knowledge? The whole purpose of this law is we need to value our knowledge, to restore our generations of this traditional knowledge, to have very strong laws we can deal with it, and also safeguard our oral tradition. And there is the goal of this law is to synchronize between office and National Biodiversity Authority. So therefore, I would really like to conclude by saying that when we talk of holistic aspect of health, it talks of the multidimensional aspect, talking about the mind, body, spirit. It encourages physical, mental, emotional, social, intellectual, and spiritual well-being. According to holistic medicine, we can obtain optimal health, and which is the primary goal of holistic medicine, is first by maintaining this proper balance in our life. We get disease because this balance is missing in our life. And when they talk of holistic health, it includes our lifestyle, our dietary habits, our routines, and this becomes a very important way to, talk about holistic health and maintain it. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, I took 10 minutes more.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you
fine.
very much for such a beautiful lecture, and the concept is so clear after you discussed it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. See, you can please, if you have any questions, please, I don't like to speak behind a computer. Unmute yourself and come on video, and then we can have some discussion. Fine? Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. But all the topics you have discussed are so clear.
I'm sure. Anything else? They gave me half an hour for discussion. Any questions I should have? Yes, anything else? Any question? I don't want thank yous. I want some questions. You agree with me or not that, as women at home, we are so familiar with many of our herbs. We try so many medicines ourselves in our food. Look at our food, which will go with what, which will go with this will go with that. We have so many notions when a woman is pregnant, what to feed her. So, we have this knowledge. We have not put it systematically together. Do you agree or not?
True, ma'am. We agree to it. In the kitchen, every day there is an experiment.
Yeah, definitely. See, so, and imagine all this knowledge is now in the name of patents being taken away by the Western world. So it's really very sad, so we need to really learn a lot about patents, how to counter it, how to preserve our knowledge is something which is very important.
Right, ma'am. We have learned so many things from our mother and grannies, and that is so useful for small problems. We always go to our kitchen and we find a solution.
Definitely. See, that's very nice, especially when you have children, no? When you're treating the children, we don't run to the doctor immediately, First,
True,
we
ma'am.
try our own medicines.
Very beneficial and very helpful.
Anyone else? Any other question? We still have 15 minutes. Any more questions? Yes, please. Any more questions?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
So
Come on,
myself-
video if possible.
Myself, Dr. Ramesh Pratap Singh, ma'am.
Can you come on video? Yeah, good. Nice to see.
KS साकेत पीजी कॉलेज अयोध्या से मैम।
अच्छा अच्छा, चलिए।
आपने बहुत अच्छे ढंग से मैम बताया जो सात्विक और राजस और तामसिक भोजन के विषय में बहुत अच्छा रहा और हमारी परंपरा में शामिल भी है और इसको, लेकिन मैम इसको जैसे कि मीडिया के द्वारा इसको प्रचारित उतने ढंग से नहीं किया जाता, जैसे आपने कहा ना कि पिज्जा बर्गर और चॉकलेट ये सब ज्यादा प्रचारित है कंपनियों के द्वारा। क्या ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो सकता कि इसको जो है मीडिया के द्वारा और प्रचार प्रसार किया जाए इस संदर्भ में,
रमेश जी,
जिससे कि नई पीढ़ी जो है इस तरफ आकर्षित हो, क्योंकि शहरी बच्चे तो बहुत ज्यादा मात्रा में यही पिज्जा बर्गर कोल्ड ड्रिंक और इसी सब पे आकर इसी को देखकर टीवी या मीडियम देखकर इधर ही ज्यादा आकर्षित होते हैं। हम लोग बताने के बावजूद लेकिन समय के साथ नहीं चल पा रहे हैं।
रमेश जी, आपका क्वेश्चन बहुत अच्छा था और मेरे को ना आई एम स्टिल वेरी ऑप्टिमिस्टिक। एक ना मैंने बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक आर्टिकल पढ़ा था, एमएन श्रीनिवास, पुराने वाले नहीं, एक बैंगलोर की एक स्टडी थी, मद्रास की एक स्टडी थी। तो उन्होंने जब ये ना केलॉग्स जो ये मॉर्निंग सीरियल्स बनाते हैं ना, केलॉग्स आपको मालूम होगा, जब
Yeah.
केलॉग्स इंडिया में आया तो उन्होंने कहा कि हम 3 महीने में देखेंगे कि इंडिया का ब्रेकफास्ट टेबल चेंज हो जाएगा, हर कोई केलॉग्स खाएगा। लेकिन वो स्टडी ने, और फिर मैकडोनल्ड ने भी यही बोला था कि जब उन्होंने इंडिया में अपना फर्स्ट वेंचर स्टार्ट किया था कि हम देखेंगे कि पूरा इंडिया केवल हमारे बर्गर्स पे चला जाएगा। लेकिन एक उन्होंने बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टैटिस्टिक्स दी थी कि रोड साइड में जो आदमी डोसा बनाता था सड़क के किनारे, उसने 7 लाख डोसा 1 साल में बेचे। और जो ये मैकडोनल्ड के जो बर्गर्स थे, एक तो उन्होंने इतना पैसा खर्च किया कि इंडिया में काफी लोग वेजिटेरियन है तो उन्होंने वेजिटेरियन नॉन वेजिटेरियन बिल्कुल अलग रखा। बीफ बर्गर जो उनका वेस्ट में बहुत फेमस है, उसको उन्होंने बिल्कुल इंडिया में नहीं करा। लेकिन इसके बावजूद वो 3 साल में ब्रेक इवन नहीं कर पाए। तो यस, आज की जो हमारे यंगर जनरेशन है, क्योंकि इस तरह से आप एडवर्टाइज करते हैं ना, हमारा फूड तो कहीं एडवर्टाइज नहीं होता है। आप ये पिज्जा बर्गर जो भी है, कितने डोमिनोज देखो, ये सब देखो, कितना एडवर्टाइजमेंट होता है, कितना पैसा ये बड़ी बड़ी कंपनीज खर्च करती हैं। दे डोंट टॉक अबाउट द हेल्थ एस्पेक्ट। हमारा जो यंगर जनरेशन है, ठीक है वो खाते हैं पिज्जा बर्गर ये सब, बट ओकेशनली किसी का बर्थडे ओके, इट कैन नॉट बी द रेगुलर फूड। हमारा जो रेगुलर फूड है वो 5000 साल लगे हैं उसको डेवलप होने में। हम बहुत पर्टिकुलर हैं कि हमारे मुंह में क्या जा रहा है, हम क्या खा रहे हैं। हमको ये भी मालूम होना चाहिए कि हम क्या खा रहे हैं। नो, इट्स अगेन पार्ट ऑफ आवर होल इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम। कहीं भी आप जाओ, स्पेशली व्हेन यू आर ट्रैवलिंग इन द वेस्ट, आपको मालूम नहीं होता आप क्या खा रहे हो, बट यू वांट टू नो व्हाट इट इज। आप कुछ भी चीज मुंह में नहीं डालते हो। तो ये सब हमारी जो ट्रेडिशंस हैं, ये तो रहेंगी कंटिन्यू। यस, मॉडर्न जनरेशन ये सब उनको पसंद आते हैं, पिज्जा बर्गर्स एंड ऑल दैट टेक, बट इट कैन नॉट बी अ रेगुलर फूड। रेगुलर फूड तो हमारा अपना ही चलता है। दैट इज समथिंग वी हैव टू एम्फसाइज। ये जैसे ना आजकल की इतनी वर्ल्ड आप देखिए, इतनी बड़ी बड़ी कंपनीज है, उनका एडवर्टाइजमेंट में कितना जाता है। देखो, एक और मेरे को बहुत इरिटेशन होती है, जो आजकल इसके एडवर्टाइजमेंट होते हैं ना, जो परफ्यूम्स एंड ऑल, कि कितने एडवर्टाइजमेंट होते हैं ना कि ये लड़की जाती है तो उसको स्मेल आती है लड़के से, तो फिर वो जाके बड़ा परफ्यूम डालता है और बड़ा खुश, फिर सारी लड़कियां उसके पास आ रही है। देखो, हमारे कल्चर में हमको तो परफ्यूम की जरूरत ही नहीं है। नहाना कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है। आप बिना नहाए आप पूजा नहीं करेंगे, बिना नहाए आप दिन नहीं शुरुआत करेंगे। एवरी डे वी नीड टू हैव अ बाथ, 1 टाइम और 2 टाइम्स। तो नेचुरल, बट ये एडवर्टाइज इस तरह से करते हैं कि आपको अपनी नहाने की तो बात ही नहीं करते हैं कि आपकी बॉडी से स्मेल आ रही है तो आप उसको कैसे करेंगे, यू पुट परफ्यूम्स एंड यू डू विद इट। तो ये सब एडवर्टाइजमेंट में इतना पैसा रहता, मल्टी बिलियन डॉलर्स की ये कंपनीज हैं, तो देयरफॉर दे आर एबल टू गेट अवे विद इट। बट अगर आप ये थोड़ी समझ आ रही है, जो हमारा अपना फूड है, हेल्दी फूड है, घर का फूड है, व्रतों में उसमें हमारा कितना सात्विक फूड रहता है, तो उसके अपने एडवांटेजेस हैं। अब धीरे धीरे व्हेन यू हैव कोर्सेज लाइक दिस, वी आर टॉकिंग सो मच अबाउट आवर ancient traditional knowledge, it is very important to understand that. Fine.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
और कोई? Anyone else? Anyone else? Any other question?
मैम, लगता है कि आप इतना अच्छा ढंग से बताए हैं कि किसी को प्रश्न की आवश्यकता ही नहीं है।
नहीं, लेकिन मैं अपना आपके एक्सपीरियंस से शेयर करिए ना, हम लोग सब टीचर्स हैं, तो
जी
एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कर सकते हैं ना। प्रश्न की बात नहीं है कि हम लोग जो बातें मैंने कही वो सही है कि नहीं। हम लोग देखो, पूरा इंडिया रिप्रेजेंट हो रहा है ये कोर्स में, हर एक के अलग फीचर्स हैं, हर एक के, बट एक यूनिटी तो है उसमें। नॉर्थ ईस्ट का खाना बिल्कुल अलग है, केरला का बिल्कुल अलग होगा, गुजरात का बिल्कुल अलग होगा, बट there is a uniformity in spite of all the differences. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other question? We still have 15 minutes. I'm not going to leave before 5:30.
मैम आपने इतनी अच्छी व्याख्या किया है कि फिर कोई प्रश्न ही नहीं बचता है।
नहीं अपने एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करिए ना, फिर अपने रीजन के नई बातें मेरे को भी सीखने को मिलेगा। यस
अरे सब लोग इंट्रोड्यूस ही कर दें अपने को, इंट्रोडक्शन अपना दे दें।
हाँ, कहाँ से किस रीजन से आ रहे हैं, बट प्लीज कम, ये ऑनलाइन का सिस्टम तो थोड़ा ठीक है, वी कैन रीच लॉट ऑफ पीपल, बट इसके अपने नुकसान भी तो हैं थोड़ा।
जी
तो एटलीस्ट लगेगा मेरे को कि क्लास में हैं हम लोग साथ में। इंट्रोड्यूस करिए अपने को, कहाँ से।
Good evening, ma'am. I'm
कम
Dr.
ऑन वीडियो, कम ऑन वीडियो।
Okay. Sure, ma'am. I will.
Good evening, madam. Myself, Gayatri Kalpana from Maharashtra, Latur district, Udgir.
ओके गुड
See my daughter.
गुड कम ऑन वीडियो, या वेरी नाइस। ओके या ओके, नीता पांडे, गुड। कहाँ
Good
से हैं
evening,
आप?
ma'am. I'm Dr. Neeta Pandey from KS PG College, Ayodhya.
अयोध्या से, ओके गुड। चलिए, बहुत खुशी हुई मिलके।
Dr. Ramesh Pratap Singh is my colleague. There are so
Okay.
many participants from my college, and we are all enjoying it. And about Ayodhya, there are so many good things about Ayodhya, and the city is going through change.
ओके
There are a lot of disturbance, but we know that it's going to be the best.
ओके
We are into that. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming.
यस, और कोई? या इंट्रोड्यूस योरसेल्फ। ओ Chitranjan, very interesting. I think Assam didn't have salt, no, in the beginning. How did you manage? Tell us something others will also learn. They didn't have salt, no? How did they manage food? No, not now. I'm talking about the past. They would make their own salt from plants. Do you know that? In Assam.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, the traditional ways of, please, next time you go and read, how did they make salt? You come from Assam. Now we are not talking about the modern world, but earlier, how did they manage? Yes, anyone else? Anyone else? Any question? Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, ma'am. I am Dr. Surendrapal.
वीडियो में आइए, वीडियो में आइए।
मैम मेरा लाइट अभी मतलब जस्ट अभी मतलब चला गया है।
ओके, नो इश्यूज।
रूम में बैठा हूँ मैं इस समय।
कहाँ से हैं आप सुरेंद्रपाल जी?
मैम मैं एग्रीकल्चर इंजीनियरिंग, मैम शामली में रहता हूँ। आरकेपीजी कॉलेज शामली, राष्ट्रीय किसान पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट कॉलेज शामली।
चलिए,
मैम एडवर्टाइजमेंट 50 में सेलेक्ट हुआ है, मतलब सिलेक्शन हुआ है मेरा। मैं बेसिकली एग्रीकल्चर इंजीनियरिंग सब्जेक्ट पढ़ाता हूँ।
ओके गुड। तो ये तो आपका फूड से तो आपका कितना कनेक्शन होगा ना, जो प्लांट्स और इसकी बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग।
मैम मैं हाँ मतलब कनेक्शन है, बट बेसिकली मैं मैकेनाइजेशन का स्टूडेंट हूँ मैम।
ओके
मैकेनाइजेशन में फार्म मशीनरी और पावर इंजीनियरिंग, जो ट्रैक्टर्स हैं और जो मशीनरी है एग्रीकल्चर की।
ओके, विद दैट यू डिल, फाइन।
जी मैम। ओके, वो सब्जेक्ट में पढ़ाता हूँ। और रहने वाला मैं बुलंदशहर डिस्ट्रिक्ट का रहने वाला हूँ।
चलिए,
तो मेरा प्लेस भी नजदीकी है।
ओके।
जी मैम, और मैम बहुत अच्छा है आपका लेक्चर, बहुत अच्छा लगा लेक्चर, एकदम बहुत ही इनोवेटिव था। जी मैम।
Anyone else? Anyone else, please?
गुड इवनिंग मैम।
Hello.
गुड इवनिंग।
हाँ, गुड इवनिंग। कहाँ से हैं आप, दमयंती जी?
आई एम फ्रॉम सोलापुर मैम।
Okay, okay. What subject? Which subject?
केमिस्ट्री मैम।
Okay, okay. Good. See, there are so many people from so many different parts of the country.
मैम।
Anyone else? Anyone else has any question? Yes. Please ask anyone else. You can come on video. Yes. Anyone else? Yes. Can someone come? Are you able to hear me or not?
We hear you, ma'am.
Okay. What about the others? Why are they so quiet? See, it's very difficult to talk in a webinar, no? Unless you all get involved. It's so difficult. Otherwise, I am only speaking. And there are advantages of a webinar, but it also has a lot of disadvantages. No, I don't know how many people just leave their camera on and they are busy doing other things. You're only there for the certificate. So, see, government of India is spending so much of money. It should be useful.
It is true, ma'am. It is true that there are advantages and disadvantages from both the sides. We also miss the face-to-face contact with the speaker.
See, but it saves. See, unless we interact, no, there'll be, if they feel after some time when this is the kind of reaction we get, they'll close all this. See, then it involves so much hassle, no, going to a particular place for women to leave their children, leave their homes. Now you just have to devote 1.5 hours from wherever you are. No, it doesn't disturb your routine. So, you know, these are so many advantages, but we need a lot of interaction. Otherwise, it just becomes, it cannot be a one-way street only, no? Then because that feeling is coming, I'm part of many bodies that people just join, you know, so we said we should control the numbers. They should all be visible. You know, we should have those kinds of technologies where we know that you are really listening and not just there for the certificate of it.
It's a bitter truth, ma'am.
That's a fact, you know. So these are some of the issues which are there. So no more questions?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. No question, ma'am.
Someone has raised a hand. Kalpana, can you? Yeah, please.
No, ma'am. No questions.
Okay. So fine. See you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank
I
you.
wish there were more
Thank you,
questions,
ma'am.
but I enjoyed addressing
Good night,
you all.
ma'am.
Okay. See you all.
Bye-bye, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, mom.
Bye. Acha, I can't end this video call. I think they have to end it. I am not able to close it. Where are the organizers? It is saying you can't end the call. So fine, let me try again.